Welcome to Market Madness, the podcast from Gimme Sport where every day is like deadline day. We are live, so please, you guys, no swearing, okay? I know you're like me.
I am like that, actually. Market Madness is the ultimate football podcast for fans who want to go beyond the headlines and into the stories that shape the transfer market. Each episode will feature high-profile guests, breaking news, features, games, and challenges.
Now, you can watch the show on YouTube, Facebook, and X, or search at Give Me Sport. Listen on your favorite podcast app of your choice. Links can be found in the show notes. For more info on any of the stories discussed today, head over to Give Me Sport's website.
Myself, Olivia Buzaglo, and Joel Beya are back for episode 7. I can't believe we're already on episode 7. We are joined, as always, by our resident journalist, Ben Jacobs. Hi, Ben. I mean, we're now past deadline day. Have you recovered from what was an absolutely crazy January for you?
Yeah, yesterday was the Turkish deadline day, and I was chasing whether Kieran Trippier might go to Galatasaray. He's staying at Newcastle, so I've been working right into mid-February, but maybe what will happen is in the next week or so, I'll just disappear. I'll be on a beach somewhere in the south of France, and then Market Madness will just have to continue without me whilst I recharge.
To be honest, I would not blame you at all, Ben, if you did that. It feels like it never ends for you guys. Right, coming up on Market Madness today, we've got a busy show for you as always. We are joined by French football expert Jonathan Johnson to look back on yesterday's David versus Goliath Champions League fixture between Brest and PSG.
And we'll hear from Harry Kane on life at Bayern, as well as the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup.
South American football expert Tim Vickery will pop in to tell us how Neymar's return has gone down in Brazil. Tim will also compete against Ben in the Journalist Mailbag Challenge.
Oh, that sounds like that's going to be really interesting. You got radio presenter and Newcastle fan Emil Franchi will be joining us to talk about a trip to Wembley.
Newcastle fans are going to enjoy that one, and we'll tell you why it's a family affair at Lincoln City. Right, let's get into it, shall we? This is Market Madness from Give Me Sport.
Okay, so Olivia, how did Chelsea get on last weekend in the FA Cup?
Listen, FA Cup weekends come and gone. No one really cares about that. I would ask how Arsenal got on the FA Cup, Joel, but actually, if you remember rightly, you went out actually in the third round of the FA Cup, which is even more embarrassing, and because you went out to Manchester United. But before we do all of that, I think we have to mention, Joel, the big news that's come out for Arsenal today, and that is that Kai Havertz has suffered a season-ending injury. Ben, can you give us a little bit more detail on what has happened to Arsenal's really only recognised number 9?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the whole sort of narrative in the January transfer window was around Arsenal needing a 9, but perhaps the names that they were looking at, particularly Benjamin Sesko or Alexander Isak, not being available. But it was fine for a bit because Kai Havertz can lead the line, and Gabriel Jesus came back and found a bit of form. And then suddenly Jesus is out and you're thinking, okay, it's Kai Havertz until the end of the season, and now he's out as well. So Arsenal very thin all of a sudden. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, of course, but now I think they will have wished that they will have brought in that number 9 in January. Evan Ferguson was maybe the only one they could have tried to get over the line on a permanent buy, or Igor Jesus at Botafogo, but they decided that the Ferguson price was something they weren't prepared to pay. He went to West Ham United, and with Igor Jesus, the feeling was more that that was kind of an Edu legacy target. So they stuck with what they've got. And now bad news in the last 24 hours. Kai Havertz will miss the rest of the season due to a torn hamstring sustained whilst the team were doing some warm weather training in Dubai. Now, at this stage, it's unclear whether Havertz will need surgery or not. But regardless, he's not expected to return before the season ends and is prioritising rehabilitation with a view to the 2025-2026 season. So, Joel, you were telling me and Olivia earlier on not to swear on the show, but do you want to sort of just scream into a pillow or put yourself on mute, say a few expletives, and then come back on air?
Oh! Look, 15 goals this season by Kai Havertz, and he was getting all the criticism underneath the sun. And you look at it now and you wonder if the goals are not coming from Bukayo Saka injured, if they're not coming from Kai Havertz, where are we going to get them from? Honestly, the disappointment has been real. And I've always said, you know, I don't know if you can remember this, Liv, but I've always said, I'm happy with the contribution Kai's had, because if you had told me 2 seasons ago that he would have given us what he's given us, we all would have been more than happy. I guess expectations change as time goes, but he's been absolutely solid for us. He's not an out-and-out number 9. The chances he gets, it's not his fault, you know. And I don't know if you remember during the deadline day Market Madness show, I had said to what was I said to Fabrizio for a minute? Fabrizio Romano, that we should have invested in someone, and I was a little bit disappointed that I was a little bit disappointed that we hadn't. And I guess this is why you cannot rely on players to play so many games and think it's going to be okay. Him, Bukayo, they've been really good when it comes to the injuries, but you have to always remember that luck will run out at the end. You know, and again, it's just down to us. We've sold Chidu to Manchester United. We've gotten rid of anyone, Balogun a couple seasons ago. We haven't Eddie. We haven't replaced them, and this is what you get for not having a large enough squad.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for Kai Havertz, because you never want to wish an injury like that on anyone, and I'll always have a soft spot for Kai Havertz. Everyone knows, and I think most Chelsea fans will feel the same. I still am at the position, or the thought that Arsenal will never win the league with Havertz as their number 9. I understand that you guys are happy with his contribution, because 15 goals in a season is pretty good for someone that is not an out-and-out number 9. But when I watch Kai Havertz play, it's really hard to describe, but I'm just a bit like meh. I'm a bit like, eh. Is there anything more? I feel like that player's in there. I was actually watching something of him at Leverkusen the other day, and I was just thinking, where is that Kai Havertz? Because we saw it, and when I say we saw it in tiny little glimpses when he was at Chelsea, and we've seen it in like little glimpses at Arsenal, but he misses far too many chances, and maybe that's just because he's not an out-and-out number 9, but you can't deny that he's had an impact on the team, because he's really the only one that scores goals. But
is he not like Nicholas Jackson then? You're describing the same type of player, not the style, but it's the same. They get a lot of chances. They both don't score them. They're both not out and out number 9s.
No, Nicholas Jackson to me is number 9. I think he's more than a number 9, but that is his best position, right? And with Nicholas Jackson, last season, do you remember how that was his first season playing number 9? By the way,
but that's what I'm saying. That was his best season. It's not.
That's his first season in England, Joel.
Yeah, I respect him, by the way. I'm not saying he's a bad player.
We're talking about similar numbers for a player that's been in England for 1 year compared to a player that's been in England for 4 or 5 years now. But anyway, regardless, obviously Kai Havertz it's a really disappointing injury, and I'm just wondering, just quickly, Joel, what do Arsenal do now? What's your suggestion?
You're going to have to start mixing and matching. You're going to have to start playing Trossard as a false 9, which I'm not really a fan of anyway. You're going to have to start playing Martinelli as a false 9. The only positive part is that those players have played in that position this season, and Arsenal have had spells in games and certain games where that's been the outlet. So it's not going to be completely strange to the team. You're talking about can Kai Havertz win us the league if he's not an out-and-out number 9? Can we get top 4 without him? That's a question.
Yeah, just one thing we should emphasize, they can add a free agent. There's not that many around, but interestingly, Mario Balotelli might be a free agent. Perhaps Arsenal have to dig a little bit deeper, bring in somebody random, temporary. I'm not in any way suggesting they're looking at Balotelli, but free agency could be a way around this for Arsenal.
It has to be, Ben. It has to be. For you to have an option and say, I'm not taking it, just tells me everything about our title challenge.
Well, talking of strikers, I'm glad we haven't got time for the FA Cup chat, to be perfectly honest. Talking about strikers, because before we actually get into the show, it feels like we're already into the show. It is time for Ben's live question challenge. And today's question revolves around Ipswich striker Liam Delap. So I want to know, Ben, we want to know, Who is leading the race for him? We'll check in with you at the end of the show.
Oh man, you know what? You're talking about FA Cup. You don't want to talk about FA Cup misery and stuff like that. I still feel like we need to talk about the Champions League, though. I mean, Liv, what's your thoughts on the new format going?
I'm sort of like 50-50 on it at the moment, because I just feel like there's no real jeopardy in the group phase, because so many teams go through. Obviously, they almost got what they wanted because City are playing, Real Madrid in a knockout game. But we all know City aren't at the levels, and we know Real Madrid haven't been at the levels that they usually are in this competition in their respective leagues, domestically as well. But I think if all teams usually are at the levels that we know that they can get to, then I understand you're going to be playing teams that you're going to have bigger games earlier on, but there's no jeopardy. You could lose 4 games and still go through out of the games you play. But obviously, now we're getting City Real Madrid, and what a game that was last night. Like, unbelievable. Didn't see that coming. I should have, given City how City have played for this season, but I thought they just threw the game away. I don't know about you, Ben. Did you feel the same? How can you be 2-1 up in the 88th minute or whatever it was?
Yeah, it was typical City, and yet atypical City, because we're just not used to them doing this. But for the 5th time, they've had a lead in a game and gone on to lose it this season. And you have to go back 4 years collectively to find 5 games that they were winning in and they lost. And they've done it 5 times this season. And the 2 goals that Real scored, including the Bellingham winner, were so preventable. They had opportunities to clear the ball with Ederson for the equaliser from Brahim Diaz. And then it was a poor ball backwards, but still they had plenty there. They panicked. And eventually you get a situation where Bellingham gets a tap in after Vinny Jr.'s shot was saved. And this is just not Manchester City and the game management that we're used to seeing. So really surprising. Real are surely going to go through now. Manchester City's perspective, they have to work out whether it's tactical, whether it's psychological, whether it's a bit of both, because this could derail them in the second half of the season. You saw John Stones speaking afterwards, Pep Guardiola in his press conference, heads had dropped. They know that this is just a half time in a Champions League playoff. They know this is a damning indictment of where this project is at the moment, and they have to find a way of understanding how, which is astonishing to even say. They can see out by doing the basics games. And this wasn't even a Kusanov or a Marmouche. The starting 11, I think, were all just existing, established Manchester City players that have won so much. And yet right now, they cannot do the basics. 2-1 up, 4 minutes to go, lose the game. That is beyond just a blip. That is something that Pep Guardiola is going to have to dig deep behind closed doors to find out what on earth is causing this. Otherwise, there is a real danger that Manchester City get knocked out the Champions League, which is now likely, but also finish outside a Champions League spot.
I mean, yeah, can we just say that Kylian Mbappe goal was possibly one of the luckiest goals I've ever seen in my life? Because I think if he connects to that, it goes in Rose Ed, like properly. And he like shinned it and it just loops into the far corner. But anyway, that was obviously Man City, Real Madrid. Another fixture that caught our eye was the all-French tie between Brest and PSG, a real David versus Goliath fixture, which in this case, sadly, the underdog lost 3-0. Now, to put everything into context for us, we're now joined by French football expert Jonathan Johnson from CBS. Bonjour, Jonathan. How are you doing today?
Hey there, guys. Doing very well, thanks. Delighted to make my debut with you all, and yeah, lovely to be here.
Good to see you, JJ.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Great to have you on the show. I mean, Joel, you're Congolese. Can you speak any French?
Yeah, I'm actually fluent French, actually.
Yeah, do you want to just do this in
Ooh.
French? Do you want me and Ben to just sit aside and you just...
No,
ask the first question in French. Answer it in French, JJ. Let's keep it short, though, and then Joel can translate.
Bon, no. I'm going to take your question, Liv, because I know that you prepared for some of these, but I'll say, Jonathan, qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire à propos de l'équipe Brest et puis tout ce qu'ils ont fait dans le Champions League cette année?
Ah, c'est une histoire géniale. C'est quelque chose d'incroyable de voir une équipe comme Brest en train de gagner autant de matchs, mais de jouer avec le cœur qu'ils ont montré à chaque match, le ferveur. C'est dommage que tous les matchs aient été déplacés au Roux-du-Roux. C'est à 100 km de le stade Francis Leblay, mais c'est pour une bonne raison, mais ça a vraiment ajouté quelque chose d'intéressant pour Ligue 1 et la France cette saison en Europe, parce que franchement, le foot français, depuis quelques années, on avait besoin de ces genres d'histoires, et c'est quelque chose vraiment franchement héroïque et assez historique d'avoir 4 clubs en la phase élimination pour la Ligue
4 clubs. Ah, ça c'est très grand, ça.
Right, please translate.
All
That's
right,
the coolest,
translate for us.
That
Yeah,
is the coolest thing.
Well,
Me and Ben were just sat here like,
I
oh my
understood.
god.
with a name
PSG,
like Olivia
Brest.
Buzaglo, surely do you speak more than one language as well, Olivia?
I mean, you should say that. No, and I blame the parents for not speaking to me, because my mum can speak Italian and my dad's from Gibraltar, so can speak a little bit of Spanish. But I actually, before this podcast, just had a Spanish lesson.
So, but there you go. It's coming. It's on the way then.
I mean, very basic. We're in like the first 2 lessons as it
It's
stands.
fine.
But
You've started.
I thought I would, try. So maybe if we get Tim Vickery, maybe I'll speak to him in Spanish at some point when he comes on the show late. Not right now. But anyway,
Let's
could you
just
please
get a
translate for us,
brief
Joel?
translation of that so we actually understand,
sure.
because I just heard Brest PSG, something about Très Difficile and something about
There
Ligue
you
1.
go.
So either Joel or
Look at
JJ,
them.
translate
No.
away.
Do you know what it is I basically asked them, how amazing it is that you have a team like Brest that are, in the Champions League. And Jonathan so elegantly put that it's a story that's been needed, in France. And to have 4 teams in the Champions League elimination stage is, incredible, basically. I think overall that is it. You said something about it being 100 yards away from the stadium, Jonathan. I can't
100
remember.
kilometers. So basically, Brest haven't been able to play any of their home games in the Champions League at their home stadium, Stade Francis Leblay. Now, I will explain why that's significant in a second, but essentially they've had to travel 100 kilometers for every game, which makes sort of the achievement and the relationship with the fans that bit more incredible, because this sensational journey that they've done together has not been at the stadium that they regularly play their Ligue 1 matches in. Now, bringing it back to the stadium is a huge part of this success story, because Brest, before French football went through all of its TV rights difficulties with the reduction in the money that all the clubs in Ligue 1 and Ligue 2 receive via the TV rights each year, they had announced that they would be building and moving into a new stadium in the future. Now, this improbable run in the Champions League to the knockout phase, just reaching this stage alone, has given them a massive amount of money that they were not budgeting with at the beginning of the year, knowing already that their budget was having to be slashed because of the TV rights situation. And suddenly these heroic performances, these really unexpected results that have taken them this far, already have a tangible impact on the club's future, because it's going to go a long way towards enabling them to continue that project of building the stadium, which is going to be vital for their future. And if you look at the way that their form has turned around recently, with fewer matches to play in Europe, they're now back on the up in the top half of the table. And there is actually a chance that we could see Brest back in Europe again next season, probably not in the Champions League, but maybe in the Europa League, maybe in the Conference League. And if they were to suddenly become regulars at European level, the financial impact that would have on the club would be, you can't underestimate it.
Jonathan, we're going to just show a picture now of a Brest fan on the screen, and it has a banner on it. Can you translate that for us and read it out, just so our listeners can know what it says as well?
So it's saying that they have Qatar, so PSG have Qatari ownership, but we've got it's called the four quarters. Now, I'm embarrassed to admit I don't actually know what the local delicacy is that they're referring to. I'll have to look it up in a minute. But I assume it's some sort of kind of cake or like savory loaf that's divided up into quarters.
Nice.
That is absolutely incredible. I think it's bread, if I'm honest with you, as well. So we're on the same path. But how is the league going in France?
I mean, it's going according to plan. I think if you're a PSG fan, it's been an interesting season so far. It's been a little bit frustrating for the neutrals because you've got two teams that could potentially challenge PSG. None of them, obviously, Brest, but you've got Marseille and Monaco. Monaco, who have of course made some waves in Europe this season, beating Barcelona notably in the opening day, and they'll be going up against Benfica in the playoff knockout round. I was actually in Monaco to see them take on my beloved Aston Villa in the penultimate round of games. And you have this sense of frustration that maybe some of those clubs that are capable of running PSG closer, Lille as well, who are automatically into the round of 16 in the Champions League, or another club who are perhaps a little guilty of letting PSG run away with it. But you look at the impact as well that playing in Europe has on some of these teams, and Brest were in a bit of a battle to avoid being sucked into the relegation scrap a couple of weeks ago until their form picked up domestically. So I do think it is fair to say still that there are clubs in France who either have to prioritise the league or have to prioritise Europe. Look at Nice, for example, an absolutely, I can't really put it politely, but a disgusting and despicable campaign really in the Europa League. I think it's been hugely disappointing. And the fact that they're suddenly up there, potentially looking at a podium position, that could have potentially huge ramifications for them in the future. Obviously, Nice owned by Ineos, who now have a minority stake in Manchester United and will presumably grow that with Sir Jim Ratcliffe in the future. Ben and I have spoken about it many times, but it's a club that I think many people are expecting there to be a change of ownership, potentially sort of in the next year or so. And suddenly, if there ever may be a Champions League contender, you also got the TV rights situation, which is expected to change again because there's so much flux. It's difficult for any one club to potentially challenge PSG as consistently as is probably needed. But when you look at PSG's form recently, their unbeaten run, the way that they turn things around in the Champions League, and then you've suddenly got this Ousmane Dembele in extremely good form, arguably potentially an early Ballon d'Or candidate. You could argue that that's actually a good thing for PSG because they might finally be able to put together the competitive edge and deep run in the Champions League all the way potentially to the final, which was missing last season, where they arguably overachieved a little bit.
I want to talk about the man that was just on the screen, Ousmane Dembele. Do you think, you obviously touched on him there, an early Ballon d'Or shout is a big shout, JJ, but I suppose you've probably watched more of him than any of us have. I mean, I've only watched little bits of him, but would you say he's playing the best football of his career?
I'd say he's playing the most consistent football of his career. I mean, Dembele is one of those infuriating players who can be amazing to watch in one game and then, really fairly useless in the next game. And I think the thing that's so remarkable about this is you look back at the course of his season so far, when he was left out of the squad when PSG went away at Arsenal and got beaten, and then he got sent off against Bayern Munich away from home. And it was at that moment after the red card against Bayern where this crazy run of form started. It was about mid-December when he scored against Lyon. And since then, there's only been one game that PSG have played that he hasn't scored in. I mean, his stats in 2025 so far are crazy. 15 goals alone in 2025. You look at the key contributions he made against Manchester City and Stuttgart. Okay, yes, it's extremely early days right now in terms of potentially being in Ballon d'Or contention. But this is a player who many people have felt for a long time, if he really got it together and played with some consistency, would be a genuine, world beater. He's starting to show that maybe being played as this false nine solution for Luis Enrique, which, to be fair, is something he's been looking to pull off with PSG since arriving. Suddenly it's like everything has kind of clicked into place for PSG. Bradley Barcola suddenly, producing again. You've got Desiree Doué, who's playing very well. You've got the arrival of Kvaratskhelia as well, which has really seems to have brought out the best in all of PSG's attacking elements. There's a settled midfield. The defence is finding its feet as well. Suddenly things are falling into place, and none more so than for Dembele. And you look at some of the way that his teammates are talking about him, the way that Luis Enrique is talking about him, it's clear that everybody has this real affinity for a player who's in the absolute form of his life. And I think there is genuine hope and confidence that he will be able to maintain that over the next couple of weeks and months. And if he does, it's really difficult to argue that that any team will want to draw PSG, whereas a couple of months ago they probably have been rubbing their hands at the prospect because, you know, PSG for a long time were looking like they wouldn't even make it into the top 24.
Yeah, and I think that victory over Manchester City in the Champions League, JJ, really summed up this new PSG project. And many people at the time said the sort of star-laid squad with the likes of Neymar and Messi may not actually, even if on paper they were incredible individually, have been able to win a game like that. So is this the first formative but positive signs we're seeing that this new buy young, where possible buy French PSG project might finally yield them that one trophy, the Champions League, that they lacked, despite having season on season on season historically with many more established known stars?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you know, it's definitely a possibility, and there have been encouraging signs. Like I mentioned, the run to the semi-finals last season. You know, there was huge disappointment that PSG fell short against Borussia Dortmund, who obviously went on to lose the final against Real Madrid. It would have set up a very narrative-rich final, because obviously it would have been Kylian Mbappe essentially signing off with Paris against his future employers, Real. But it wasn't to be, and you know, I don't think PSG were ready at that moment, and arguably did well to even reach the semi-finals. But there is a feeling now, with the odd exception of, you know, the likes of Randall Colomwani, who has started fantastically well with Juventus but didn't quite fit with the project, that this change in mentality, moving away from, you know, the big names like your Neymars, like your Messis, like your Mbappes as well, and buying sort of these younger, hungry players, not necessarily always French, because you've got João Neves in the midfield, Vitinha as well, who've really come to the fore and done very well under Luis Enrique so far. But generally speaking, you know, it's a team that's not got as much sort of ego issues as there were in the past, but does still have a lot of character. There's some very interesting players blending together, personalities as well. And I think with one or two bits of fine tuning, you know, PSG do have a squad and a group of players that are capable of, you know, going on an even deeper run. And, you know, if you look at the way that the draw has potentially set them up, you know, they go up potentially against the Liverpool or Barcelona, assuming they get the business done in the second leg against Brest, which, with all due respect to the minnows of Brest, you know, you would expect them to do. Then potentially, you know, I don't think Liverpool or Barcelona will be relishing going up against PSG, possibly, especially given Barca got knocked out by PSG last season. And then suddenly, if you look ahead to the quarterfinals, I know that, having mapped it out in my head, Villa and PSG could potentially meet there. You know, you look at it and you think that, you know, if they can really keep this form going, certainly through the round of 16, then things could really open up for them in the quarterfinals and possibly beyond that. But first things first, you know, they need to get the second leg against Brest out of the way, and then see what comes after that. But there is a sense of optimism suddenly, and that something has really clicked with these players in the last couple of months, and that brush with adversity and potentially being eliminated so early in the Champions League has actually galvanized them. And now you're seeing all of these players suddenly come to the fore with great consistency.
Really quickly, Jonathan, I want to ask about Lille, another French team that's qualified for the next round of the Champions League automatically. Can you put this achievement into perspective for us quickly, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a massive achievement. You look at their squad, and there's not too many names on there that jump out at you when you're looking at it on paper. But you know, they have come together to really perform well as a group. You know, Jonathan David on an expiring contract, expected to leave at the end of the summer. Angel Gomez as well, another one, and Edon Jagrova will potentially be entering the last 12 months of his contract this summer. So there's a lot of interesting names there potentially available. It's a risky situation for Lille, because it feels like a little bit of a kind of last dance scenario for some of these players. But Bruno Genesio has them performing extremely well. They've shown a lot of character to come back from an opening defeat and then put in some very, very good performances, beating the likes of Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid. The only thing that's really been missing so far, because they've done much better than anyone expected in terms of you know, directly reaching the round of 16. The only thing that's been missing is a bit of consistency in Ligue 1, as I touched on earlier, and just being in that position to really put a bit more pressure on the likes of PSG at the top of the table. But you know, no doubt about it, Lille are certainly one of the success stories when we're looking at French football on the continental stage so far this season.
Oh man, Jonathan, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. For everyone watching and listening, you can follow Jonathan on X at John_Le Gossip, or across the CBS platforms. You got to say it with the French
Yeah,
twang.
you have to. You have to. I'm glad you had that link, Joel, and not me.
No, that's absolutely fine. And next up, we do have some exclusive Harry Kane information. But hang on a minute, Jonathan, I know you have to go. I feel like I'm getting a breaking news sensation going on here. Please, am I correct or not?
You are. Fascinating story, this. John Eustace is to be confirmed the Derby County manager today. Gimme Sport understands. Now, he's leaving Blackburn Rovers, who are 6th in the Championship, for a side that are fighting relegation. And it's due to a dispute with the owners at Blackburn, the Venky's, over the future strategy of the club. So Eustace has left Blackburn Rovers and will be confirmed as the new Derby County boss. Now, the Venky's have had this issue before. Sam Allardyce back in the day was removed after a week. John Dale Thomason had the same kind of issues as well. But imagine that scenario. You don't see it too often in football. A manager leaving a side 6th in the table who could be in the Premier League next season for Derby County, who, if things don't go according to plan, Eustace might be managing in League One next season. John Eustace, the new Derby County manager. Official confirmation expected this afternoon.
Wow. Big breaking news. Right. Thank you very much for that, Ben. This is Market Madness from Give Me Sport. Now, we teased it a little bit earlier. We are now going to watch and listen to a little bit of Harry Kane. He is flying in Germany. He starts by telling us about life at Bayern Munich, how well it's going, and then goes on to talk about the new format of the FIFA Club World Cup, which is, of course, happening this summer over in America. Let's take a look.
Obviously, I've only been here for 18 months, but I feel like it's been a huge part of my life already. The fan base has been incredible for me and really taken me in almost as one of their own, and I really appreciate that. And playing for a club like Bayern Munich, the pressure is high and every game is intense, and a lot of teams want to beat Bayern Munich to have that on their CV. So you have to be prepared in every moment, and I'm loving it. I'm enjoying this season with the team, with the coach. We're playing some really good football, and that's always a joy to be a part of as well. Obviously, different coaches determine different things. Here this season, maybe I'm not dropping as deep as maybe I was last season. The way we play, we have a lot of the ball, and the midfielders and maybe Jamal or Michael will kind of drop and get on the ball, and I'll maybe stay a little bit higher. Not to say I don't drop at all, but maybe that's just changed a little bit this season, more of a number 9, and making sure I'm in the right positions in the box to get the chances and to score some goals. So, but as always, I think with every coach and with me, I'll see what he wants and kind of adapt my game to that. Yeah, I mean, that we are who we are. I think it's important to know to be yourself, and I think everyone tries to be themselves here at the club. No one is bigger than the other. We all participate to do our job and to be one team to be successful, and and I think that kind of mindset comes from the fans, and that goes into the team, and I think that's why the connection is so special between the players and the fans as well. So it's important never to kind of forget that, and no matter where you are in the world, to always have that kind of motto and just to be yourself. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I mean, it's going to be unique. Playing this type of major tournament with your club is different to what's been done in the past, but I think it's going to be a great experience. Going out to the US as well, and a year before the World Cup itself will be a great chance to kind of get to know some of the stadiums, get to know the fans out there, and it's going to be a really great tournament. And as always, when it's the first of any type of tournament, people are wondering how it's going to go, but I'm really excited for it. we're one of the best teams in the world without a doubt. So every tournament we go into is the idea to win. We know it will be tough, of course, as every major tournament will be. But look, we're having a good season. I think, of course, we're focused on the Bundesliga and the Champions League right now. But once we're there in June, I think there'll be a real hunger to try and be the first ones to win this tournament. I think football is growing more and more out in the States, so I think they'll be excited to see some of the best teams, the best teams in the world, compete on a competitive level as well. So we know Bayern Munich have fans all over the world and plenty of fans in America. So it's a chance for them to see us live in a competitive environment, and hopefully as the tournament goes on, it gets more and more intense, and we see some big games.
You know what? For the sake of Harry Kane himself, I'm actually happy that he's finally going to win a league trophy. Spurs fans, you almost ruined this man's career. But anyway, I just want to say we're now going to be joined by South American football expert Tim Vickery. Bom dia. Let's have you in.
Bon dia.
How are you?
Bon dia. I'm very well. Very well. Yourself?
Great to see you, Tim.
Lovely to be here.
Tim, we obviously just heard Harry Kane there talking about the Club World Cup. I remember I'm a Chelsea fan, and I went out to Abu Dhabi when Chelsea played in it. And I think it was Palmeiras that were in it then.
That's it.
And oh my word, the following, we had people saying that they'd sold their houses, they sold their cars to come to Abu Dhabi to experience their team playing in a Club World Cup. It's a huge deal to South American teams, isn't it?
It's absolutely massive. It's the chance that you've got to put one over your rich cousins over the other side of the Atlantic. It's the highlight of the year. And we've seen this year, we've got 4 Brazilian clubs and 2 from Argentina in the Club World Cup. And both countries have changed their calendars in order to accommodate the Club World Cup. Brazil, right in mid-season, is pausing its entire league program for a month to enable its teams to compete in the Club World Cup. And Argentina has started its league earlier than usual to do something similar. So I wonder if the Europeans, especially in the heat of the US summer, I know a lot of the stadiums will be air conditioned, but we had a Copa America in the US last year. And I remember in one of the games, a linesman from Guatemala collapsed in the first half because of the heat. Now, if he was from Denmark or something, you might think, he's not used to it. He was from Guatemala. So the heat is going to be a problem. The end of season tiredness for the Europeans is going to be a problem. And the South Americans, the 4 Brazilians and the 2 from Argentina, they're going to take this very, very seriously. And they will travel to this competition with real thoughts of winning it.
Man, that is something else. I just want to also ask, when it comes to Neymar being back in Brazil, what has been the reaction? Because I've seen what I've seen on social media, by the way, Tim. Yeah. But what is it like in real life, face to face?
It's an amazing circus. He remains, despite the rise of Vini Jr., he is the biggest name in Brazilian football. I think it's the biggest comeback since Romario came back 30 years ago. And we've had Ronaldinho and Ronaldo come back subsequently. But what makes this so big is this isn't someone coming home just to round off his career. No, that's not the idea at all. This is someone coming home because Santos can give him a platform to win the World Cup in the middle of next year. So the ambition here is huge. Now, that might strike fans from Saudi Arabia as strange because Al Hilal didn't want him. They can only register 10 foreign players for the Saudi League. And the coach there, Jorge Jesus, said, we've got 10 foreign players who are fitter than he is. And Neymar's not able to keep up with the rhythm in training. But the ambition here from Neymar is absolutely huge. He's not rounding off his career. This is a platform for him, hopefully in his eyes, to write a glorious late chapter because the World Cup has been cruel to him. He's played it 3 times and there have been injuries and so on. this one last dart in 2026, I think this has the potential to be one of the great narrative lines in global football over the next few months.
Tim, it's interesting you say 2026 Neymar World Cup, but of course it's a 6-month deal. And there was some suggestions that a 1-year option was kind of discussed and declined. Do you sense that this is about building up Neymar's form and fitness with a view to that tournament, but in the actual build-up to the World Cup, we might see him back in Europe? Or could there be an eventuality where, if it all goes according to plan, he does do that other full year at Santos?
I think that's probably more likely because in the 6 months until the end of June, he doesn't have a great deal of time there to convince a big European club to invest in him. And would you invest in him? With his injury record over the last few years, would you invest in him? It's unlikely. My interpretation, and I could well be wrong, Lord knows I've been wrong many, many times in the past, but my interpretation would be that Brazilian clubs now, they can have owners. This is a new thing. And it's possible that Santos will enter this situation with maybe even Neymar's father becoming the owner of the club. But that's something that will be negotiated over the next few months. So my interpretation is that this is a 6-month deal just to give Neymar some flexibility if things off the field don't go the way that he wants with Santos. But I think it probably works in everyone's interests for him to stay with Santos until the World Cup.
Obviously, Santos spent last season in Division 2 for the first time ever,
Yeah.
so they're back, and they're back with a bang. What can we expect from the Brazilian Serie A side, Tim, this season? Obviously starts in March.
Yeah, Santos is a miracle. You know, when I was growing up, long before you find people, Santos was the only club from Brazil that you knew because of Pelé. And when I moved over here, I just assumed that Santos were this giant. Santos is a small city. It's less than 500,000. By Brazilian standards, that's absolutely tiny. You know, Santos is near, it's about an hour's drive with no traffic from the mega city of Sao Paulo. So the idea that historically Santos have been able to do more than the giant clubs from the city, it's extraordinary. And you knew in the end that the Santos story would be very hard to keep it going, because if you've got that tiny little catchment area, how can you possibly compete? But it's a team that everyone loves in Brazil. It's great PR from Neymar to go back to Santos. If he'd gone back to another Brazilian club, supporters of all the other clubs would have hated him. But with Santos, I think everyone will kind of be behind it. Very few people will want this to fail. What can they do? Well, really, I think the aim is just to have a solid mid-table season. It's hard to see how they can compete for the title. It's going to be interesting to see how the coach copes with all of this. He's a Portuguese coach, Pedro Caixinha. He's coached all over the world. He's one of these very serious Portuguese coaches. How he's going to cope with this circus around Neymar, I don't really know. But I suspect they'll be happy with mid-table this season.
Tim, I want to ask you about another South American player, because it does feel like Chelsea love going over to South America to get some players. What can you tell us about Corinthians Denner? Is that how you say it?
Yes. Not a lot. I mean, this is more, it's almost like plucking the fruit before it's ripe. It's the way that the market has gone in recent times. And the one that gave huge emphasis to this tendency was Vinicius Jr. And when Real Madrid bought him, he was 16. He hadn't played a senior game. And they spent a lot of money on him. And you're thinking, this is madness. It's turned out to be the bargain of the century. But lots of clubs have been trying to do the same thing. And it doesn't always work. And there's an obvious example with West Ham buying Luis Guilherme. Now, he might come through. But so far, he's really struggled. And that's hardly a surprise. He came after a grand total of 1 senior goal. So the clubs now are buying players really on promise, much more than on reality. If you're a Chelsea fan, Miss Buzaglo, the one I would be excited about is Ep7, who's coming in the summer.
Yeah.
Who I think is the best talent that Brazilian football has produced since Neymar. And he is, despite his age, I mean, he's around turn 18. Despite his age, he's not promise. He's reality. He's playing for Brazil. He's looking like an extraordinary talent. The other one that Chelsea are bringing over, Kendry Paez from Ecuador, another wonder kid, is going through difficult second season-itis. He looks a bit sad at the moment. The road between promise and reality is full of potential pitfalls. So the Chelsea model, you buy 20 of them and maybe 2 of them are going to come off. Esteban would be the one, I think, who has the best chance of really being a superstar.
Tim, I've got an additional question on Esteban, actually, because obviously I've seen in the news in different places that he wants to play more centrally. Now, when you've got the great Cole Palmer there playing there as a 10, how's that going to work? Because in my mind, I always thought he's going to come in and he's going to play on the right-hand side and Noni's going to have to sit out. Can you please explain to us what that's potentially going to be looking like? Because I want to know how we as an Arsenal team can beat Chelsea again and again next season.
And as a Tottenham fan, I want to know how we can lose to Chelsea by fewer goals. Yeah. Palmeiras aren't playing him as a 10. Palmeiras are playing him right wing. So if he's got no background of playing in the centre, it's hard to see how he can claim that position for Chelsea. Maybe long term, but I think in the short term, sorry son, you're out on the wing.
Okay, so he's going to be on the wing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, that dynamic, though, and whether he can sort of take to Chelsea and European football, because Endrick, for example, has struggled. But Tim, my sort of final...
It's not really his fault, is it? I mean, he's gone to a club that don't need him. No, that he's gone to a club that last year played very well without a centre-forward. And then suddenly, they buy Mbappe and they buy Endrick. And he's done all right when he's had opportunities. Yeah, but the problem is he's been bought by a club that don't need him.
Yeah.
Tim, one final one from me, which is sort of just a little bit broader, because we're seeing a lot of push towards recruitment from South America, but perhaps now we're seeing more investment into clubs from foreign owners in Brazil and South America at large. For example, I think it was the Argentine president alleged that Chelsea's multi-club were looking. You got John Textor, who's done great things and got success with Botafogo. There's a feeling, because they're 777 owned, that Vasco da Gama will be due some investment. And there's some suggestions that the Nottingham Forest group, if you like, might be the ones coming in there. Is this the sort of new trend and pattern, not just taking talent from South America and specifically maybe Brazil, but are we going to see more foreign owners coming in as well to the region? And how will that change the landscape?
It's too early to tell, and it certainly it can't happen in Argentina yet. Argentina's clubs, although the president would like to privatize everything, he would love this to happen. There's a huge cultural resistance to this in Argentina. So at the moment, it can't happen in Argentina. It can happen in Brazil, but it's still very early days. We've still had this for like 2 or 3 years, and there's still one huge question hanging over it: where is the return going to come from? Where are you going to make your money? Football is a hazardous business. Where are you going to make your money from South American football? And the model has been, you buy a player and you sell the player on. And that's the part of the value chain where you can make money. Can you make money from owning the club? That's still up in the open. And we still don't really know. On the John Textor thing, it's been very successful short term with Botafogo, but that seems to be running into problems. So we're in a new era and we don't really know where we are at the moment.
Right. That is all for now. But Tim, you're not getting off that easily, because we're putting you up against Ben in our journalist quickfire mailbag challenge. And basically all you have to do is answer more questions than Ben in 90 seconds. But obviously, do you talk too much? You need to, keep your answers brief, but you need to answer the questions.
Sorry.
You can have no yes or no's. You have to answer the question, but try and be brief, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Right.
No one-word answers.
No one-word answers. Right. Okay. Your time will start.
Can I do? The short answer is no, and the long answer is no.
That might be a loophole. Also, Tim, just to throw a bit of spanner in the works, I think you should take that white hat behind you and wear it for this challenge as well.
No, it's going to ruin my hair. No, it's also going to get in the way of my Italian stuff behind, which isn't just for Miss Buzaglo, the Dolce Vita poster and Roman holiday stuff. So let's not eclipse that.
Right, okay.
All right.
Your time will start, Tim, after I finish reading the first question. Here we go. Right, your first question is, will Evangelos Marinakis buy Vasco da Gama?
Well, they're currently owned by 777, although Vasco have broken that contract, and that's going to go to the law courts. So that's going to take some time to work out the legal.
Okay, why hasn't it worked out for Luis Guilherme at West Ham?
Because he came after scoring one senior goal. It's too early for him.
Where could Igor Jesus end up next?
Igor Jesus, Brazil's centre forward at Botafogo. The idea, I think, after the Club World Cup is Premier League. I was surprised that Arsenal didn't buy it during the January window.
What qualities will Vitor Hayes bring to Manchester City?
Leadership, class on the ball, and the possibility of operating anywhere in a back three or a back four. The problem, I think, is lack of physicality.
Are you surprised Besiktas won the race for Kenny Arroyo?
Santos in Brazil wanted him, and the club would have preferred to sell him to Santos, but he wanted Europe, so he's gone to Besiktas. No, I think the kids grow up with a European dream.
I feel like you've already answered this, but will Estavio play as a winger or a 10 for Chelsea?
Yeah, I can't see him as a 10. Cole Palmer, that's yours. Estevan, right wing for you. Could
Richard Rios end up in the Premier League?
I think he certainly could. May have gone already. Were it not for the Club World Cup? The Palmeiras will hang on to him for the Club World Cup, but it's kind of next window or never, because he's relatively old by the standards of the market.
Luis Enrique is on fire for Marseille. What chance does he have of a Brazil call-up?
Probably none, because he's been absolutely forgotten.
Very good.
Wow, that was good.
Tim. Very good. I'm impressed.
I thought you did really well there, Tim. Honestly, like you're much more impressive. I mean, it's not just the button-down shirt and the hats at the back. You're really, really good at these challenges.
You got 8, I'm told by our producer Nick, which is the highest number of answers in the 90 seconds we've ever had on Market Madness.
Very smooth, very smooth. Now, Ben, after giving him all those compliments, it's now your turn. So you got to make sure that you outperform him, okay? But I'm going to count you down for your time to start. 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Will Newcastle sign a right winger this summer?
Absolutely, put your mortgage on it. They've got to replace Miguel Almiron, and amongst others, they still like Nottingham Forest's Anthony Elanga.
Where will Jonathan David end up?
Pretty early to tell. Free agent, very marketable. Barcelona, the latest club that have held talks. I would keep an eye also on West Ham United and Newcastle.
Which targets did Al Ahly try for before signing Galeno?
Yeah, Galeno was a really interesting one. He was the most viable. Alex Bainer was approached, Marcus Rashford, but he turned down Saudi Arabia. And Matis Tell, who's now at Spurs, was their top target, but he didn't want to go to Saudi.
Can Matheus Cunha leave for less than his release clause if Wolves get relegated?
Not formally, it's £62.5 million. If Wolves go down, they'll of course be understanding of his situation, but the actual formal clause is £62.5 million, regardless of whether Wolves stay up or go down.
Why are Manchester City challenging associated party transaction rules again?
Victory to Tim Vickery. You can't throw in that kind of question in 90 seconds. They just think that the new amendments to the rules were rushed in without debate.
Do Milan plan on buying João Felix?
They'd love to, but there's no buy option in the deal, and Chelsea won't want to make a book loss, so it's complicated, but there is an appetite to do so.
What is Leeds' main priority position for the summer?
Definitely a playmaker, Gustavo Hamer, or possibly Emi Buendia if Leverkusen don't take up their option to buy.
First of all, the information is fantastic. The answers were brilliant from the both of you. We can definitely see that you do your journalistic work. But I have to say, the scores are in. All right. How do you reckon you did first, Ben, before I...
I mean, I did respectable, but I think I've lost because I was told that Tim got 8 and I definitely didn't match that tally.
Well, I want to say you are a smart man, Ben, because unfortunately you did get 7. There were 7 good answers, but they were 7. So this week's winner is Mr. Tim Vickery. Well done, Tim.
See, I think morally it's a draw. because
Already is a draw.
there was one question there that needed 2 hours to be answered, and even in the time, he still managed to give a good answer. So I think morally, we have to share the crown this week.
All right, we'll share the trophy.
But I do have one question that I want to ask though, and it's involving Liam Delap. Yeah, look, I would love a striker right about now, but I do know that there's a certain somebody in this chat over here that has been their team's been associated with Liam Delap. Do you know what's going to happen with him or who's leading the race for him? Tim, I'll ask you this one.
No idea. This is one for the moral winner of our challenge, Mr. Ben Jacob.
I'm not allowed to answer because you must have got amnesia, Joel. This is the question we were asked at the top of the show, and I cannot reveal the information until the end of the show. So you're just going to have to wait.
Well, I'm asking him just in case he gives us the little tip. But if you don't know, that's absolutely fine. We're going to go back again. But hang on a minute. This is Market Madness. And I want to say thank you very much, Tim, for joining us. Please make sure you follow Tim on X at Tim_Vickery. You're watching Give Me Sport, Market Madness.
Now, before we move on, Ben, got a little bit more breaking news for us?
I do. Breaking exclusive, and it is good news for Arsenal. Of course, we know that Kai Havertz is out for the season, but the club have started talks with Gabriel Martinelli over a contract extension. Still relatively early stages, but there's a feeling amongst parties that this one can get done. And it's another Arsenal tactic to protect the players that they see as integral to the project. So my understanding is that between now and the end of the season, Arsenal are actively working to extend Gabriel Martinelli.
I'm not happy about that.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, no, I'm really upset about it because it looks reactionary, you know? It doesn't come from an authentic place, especially because there was a lot of talks about that side being improved. Now, I'm not saying that he needs to move on, or I'm not giving it all that Arsenal chat, but it's kind of like, really, we had the chance to make certain moves and, you know, like try to go into the market that's just gone. And all we're doing is, yes, it's good to protect your assets, but you could have done that in December. You could have done that at the end of this last season. But now we've got injuries galore. It's, let's protect Martinelli. I mean, goodness.
Yeah, but I don't think, even though we're reporting it now, I don't think it's like Martinelli did his hamstring in Dubai and on the plane back, they went, let's tap Martinelli on the shoulder and renew him. These will be talks that will have started in the latter part you'd have thought of last year, but it's very unusual to wrap them up with an open window. So as soon as the window shuts, you make progress. And we obviously might see the same with Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's just when the window's open, it's very difficult to prioritize this. And then when it shuts, you try and ramp it up to get it done before the next window opens, which is why there's a little bit of movement.
If I'm Martinelli, right, I'm actually adding an extra 0 to whatever it is I had said earlier on in the season.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, listen, I'm sorry. I'm just so emotional about that. But look, we got the breaking news here, and we said thanks to Tim. And we've been around the world today, covered France, South America, the Club World Cup. Next up, we're back in the UK, going to the northeast of England to chat Newcastle. Also, to end, we're going to be talking to the 3 Oliver brothers, all on the books at Lincoln City as well.
Yes, but for now, the Newcastle chat. The Magpies are on their way to Wembley in their second League Cup final in 3 years. They'll be playing Liverpool on Sunday, the 16th of March. Newcastle haven't won a major trophy since their FA Cup success all the way back in 1955. And I'm pleased to say that we're now joined by Newcastle fan and radio host and my good friend who I work with, Emil Franchi. Emil, I mean, I was buzzing for Newcastle. I was rooting for Newcastle. Are there a set of fans more desperate for a trophy than you guys?
Age-old question, isn't it? I mean, probably now. I think desperate is a bit of a strong word when it comes to this, but I would describe it more as a craving now, because we kind of take these competitions a bit more seriously, as you can see this year. I think we are obviously in the final in one, and they're giving us a really good shot at the FA Cup as well, given that certain teams have gone out. So we'll see how we do with that one. But I think now that we've realised the potential of the club, we've done a final, albeit a loss, and got that out of the way. The Champions League we've returned to in that time. Premier League success probably feels a little bit far off, if at all possible. So I think being a cup winner sooner or later, it's one that many want to cross off that list of things that we were promised when this takeover happens. So yeah, I would love for it to happen. Not to go all Kevin Keegan on it already, but yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? I think that's just it would be the icing on the cake or the cherry on top if we could get both.
I just want to ask, was there a celebration in the city when you beat Arsenal last week?
Well, we do it that often that the council asked us not to do it. Unfortunately, no. You know what? I think that the celebrations in the stadium were there, and I was at the Southampton semi-final a couple of years ago. I was at this one as well. Managed to get to both the Arsenal first leg and also at St James's Park. And I just think it was confidence, It was statement of intent. The celebrations were obviously high, but I think it's just the way we went about those two games. There was a little bit of fear, and it was obviously a slightly more cautious task than what we had in the last two semi-finals against Southampton. No disrespect to them, but Arsenal obviously were a team that we looked at and went, oh, do we really want this? We'd rather have Tottenham. But it was well handled, and I know that Liverpool really went over Tottenham at Anfield, and I did read one of their articles from a fan media channel saying there was no pomp and ceremony with them. But I just think that this time we are going into this final looking forward to it.
It was a very professional result for sure. Liv?
Yeah, I mean, I want to get your thoughts on Eddie Howe. I mean, the job he's done, Emil, has just been absolutely ridiculous, out of this world. I think he's always exceeding expectations, and he's had a tough time, especially with like PSR. He's come out in press conferences and said, he hasn't been happy with certain players that have been sold and stuff. And he's turned you into a cup team as well as getting Champions League. Like, what do you make of the job he's done, and how much do you want to keep hold of him?
Oh, I mean, when the England job stories came out, I was getting a little bit hot under the collar, thinking, oh no, is this it? Is this going to derail all of that work that's been done there? But then that settled down with Tuchel taking the job. And I think the one thing with how, especially within our own fan base, is he is just constantly proving people wrong. He's had some doubters. He's definitely had doubters outside of the Newcastle fan base, and obviously fans can be fickle. Fans can see one loss as a manager doesn't know what he's doing. But I think until he's got this major investment, a lot of fans are willing to really give him a fair chance. Last year was plagued by injuries, but we were in the Champions League. We did what we could against a very tough group and two very tough cup runs as well. And I think that he's always growing and learning. The one thing that has always impressed me about Eddie Howe is the way he talks about football, the way he went and toured clubs in Europe before he took the job at Newcastle. He went to Atletico, saw what Simeone was doing there. I think his first task before he started at Newcastle was update all of his PowerPoint slides. And he's that kind of boring guy you need in charge of a mad club like Newcastle, because he's the calm to our storm, if you like. And the one thing I've seen change this season is that he's now able to implement a plan B. We saw 5 at the back against Arsenal in that semi-final second leg, which a lot of people weren't expecting, but at the same time, we were crying out for it, really. And the run across Christmas and New Year was amazing after a blip in form. I know we had that defeat against Bournemouth. We had the disappointment against Fulham at home. Those are things that can hopefully be ironed out, but he's just so reserved, and I think that's what I like the most. He doesn't lose his head. He doesn't blame things after the game. He takes some responsibility, doesn't talk down his players, and really he's got Jason Tindall to do the talk while he does the walk, if you like. He rattles the opposition, as you've seen with those hilarious news stories that have come out about the Aston Villa game of him wearing a hoodie with him and Eddie Howe's face on, imitating Wham for Last Christmas. So that's all a bit of fun. All a bit of fun.
No, it's funny.
I love that.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Ben.
No, you go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to say that duo, I didn't know how I felt about it in the beginning because I thought, oh, you know what? The manager should be the one talking. He should be the one that's in the front line. But I think they've got the mix right. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, Jason Tindall is almost a cult hero. The fact that from fans calling him it on a podcast, I do things for calling him Mad Dog, to then a fan was just picked out the crowd when they did one of their warm weather training camps in Saudi Arabia and called him Mad Dog on the commentary. And now fans call him Mad Dog Tindall. And I even saw that the players have started to call him Mad Dog Tindall. So yeah, I mean, it's just one of those classic football relationships. If you look at like your Brian Clough and Peter Taylor, you know, they come as a pair. You wouldn't want to see them split apart. When they did split apart at Bournemouth and Jason Tindall took over, didn't go too well. So long may they reign.
I was just going to ask you from a fan perspective, and I know you want both, but I'm intrigued to know what, as a fan, would be more welcome and important. Winning that first major trophy for 70 years or qualifying for Champions League, because the latter is going to be better for the club as a project and financially, and ultimately it's going to get you a minimum of 4 home games at St James's Park. And I was there for the win over PSG in the Champions League, and it was one of the most astonishing nights and atmospheres I've ever seen. But I get the sense, maybe you disagree, Emil, that most fans would actually just take the trophy because the vast proportion of people inside St James's Park were not born and around 70 years ago to see them win anything.
I know that feeling very well. Yeah, as I said before, as much as the Champions League is a nice idea this year, it is something we were striving towards. I've got no problems with Europa League. I have no problems with Conference League last season, but now I've seen what we're doing, and obviously we're dealing with one of those weird Premier League seasons where the likes of Bournemouth and Forest and, you know, even Fulham, who I mentioned, who beat us, are going to be up there trying to get those places. And while Man United and Tottenham are arguably out of the equation now, you have to hope that Newcastle can keep this up. But for me personally, at this point, now we're at that second final under Eddie Howe. Now we've had the taste of defeat. You know, we've also, you forget that in that final against Man United, I think we were quite naive. There was a lot of media hype about it. There was a lot of talk about that, how long it had been since we'd won anything. And I think the sentimental bit is done. We're done with all of the interviews outside the stadium. Oh, isn't it great for Newcastle? We're back now. And this isn't going to be the last time we get to Wembley. I can assure you, you know, we'll be trying to go for it. So if you maybe take this season as getting the cup, if that halts our progress this season, I don't think many Newcastle fans will be sober enough to realise we won't get Champions League. But, you know, I think we can still compete. Man City might spring back into action, but we've got them at the weekend. That's going to be a great test for us to go to the Etihad and see if we can cash in the Man City voucher that so many teams have this season.
Really, really quick one. When are you going to hand over to Arsenal, Alexander Isak?
Never.
Because I'm starting to see, we obviously want him, but I'm also hearing rumors of,
and we don't.
No, like, you guys, Newcastle, you guys up and down, you know, like, are you really the big six? So what's happening with all of that?
I mean, it's rich hearing an Arsenal fan say up and down. Never mind. Listen. I don't think the resources are there. I keep being told that Arsenal can't afford it. I mean, with the Havertz injury now as well, you are the desperate ones, unfortunately. So, you know, the fee is going to be sky high. But the one thing that all Newcastle fans will say, as the chant goes, Bruno in the middle, Isak in attack, and Botman at the back. Those are the three we need to hang on to. But if you would ask anyone who would rather keep, it's going to be Isak, because you simply can't replace him. And if Newcastle were to, they would have a lot of questions asked unless they had someone amazing lined up. And obviously, the way that PSR has been hampering us recently, real questions would be asked. So, you know, Isak is the one that a lot of people want to keep. Not many strikers come along like him. He is arguably the second best striker in the Premier League after Haaland when he's fully in form. And Bruno and Botman are probably the ones that, if we had to, they would make way. Not because they're worse players, but simply because they are easier to replace. So, sorry, Arsenal. Keep looking.
Oh, never mind, Joel. Emil, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. You can obviously catch Emil on Premier League TV, Absolute Radio, and over on Blue Sky as well at emilfranchi.bskyb.social. As always, for more information on any of the stories discussed, you can head over to Give Me Sport's website. Thank you so much, Emil. It's been a pleasure. This is Market Madness from Give Me Sport. Right, we are finishing the show today on a rather heartwarming note. Producer Nick has many talents. He is telling us why Lincoln City really is a family club. Let's have a look.
It's been a year to remember for the Oliver brothers. 18-year-old Denny, 16-year-old Louis, and 14-year-old Kenzie are all at Lincoln City on youth scholarships, having each been at the club since they were 8 years old.
I'm Denny Oliver. I play centre mid for the under-18s. I'm currently in my second year as a scholar.
I'm Louis Oliver. I'm an under-16. I'm a centre back. I'm very good one-on-one. I can win headers and I can do all the dirty work as such as well.
I am Kenzie Oliver and I also play centre back. I'm quite physical when I play. I've got quite a decent range of passing, and I'm quite tall for my age as well.
The winner and still undefeated in 7 contests, Kelly Oliver.
The brothers grew up boxing as their dad, Kelly, fought professionally, but they quickly turned their attention to football.
It was a little bit of the boxing when we was younger, and then as you got older, it gets a little bit more serious. Maybe the academy side, it was always football after that. So there was no two questions about it for me.
Boxing when you're younger, still a bit every now and then as we were growing up, but now it's just 100% football. Like that's where our heart is. So
I was a striker when I was younger, and then as I've got older, I've been pushed back. I'm a Liverpool fan, so maybe from 5, 6, 7 up until maybe 8, 9 when Luis Suarez was there, he was my big hero. And then as I've got older, it was maybe more becoming Rodri and the better CDMs in the world, Busquets, players like that. So try and watch them, even just clips of them if it's not live. Try and take as much as I can from their game.
For me, it's probably been like John Stones, because he's good at like stepping in on the ball. He's got a good range of passing, and he's good defensively as well.
for me, it was Gerrard. I used to love Gerrard when I was younger. Got one of his kits. So obviously when I was a lot younger, he was my sort of hero. But as I've got older, more position based now. So being a centre back, Van Dijk is the one I look at. Just his dominance, leadership, and his ability on the ball as well, which is very good.
In January, all three brothers were named in the matchday squad for Lincoln's FA Youth Cup 4th round game at Plymouth Argyle. Louis and Denny both started the match, which Lincoln narrowly lost on penalties, while Kenzie was on the bench.
Again, smashed with power. Almost took the net off from Denny Oliver.
It was obviously a really big game for the club. It was a chance to get into the 5th round of the FA Youth Cup, which was never done before. We was really confident going into that game, thinking we can get through. Unfortunately, we didn't. But I think we found out maybe a couple of days before that Kenzie was going to be travelling with us. I think that was due to having a lack of players, so we needed to see build up the bench and get a few young lads on, and it turned out to be Kenzie. It was a really memorable experience. We stayed the night before, so we was all travelled down on the bus together, staying in the hotel together. So it was nice for us all to be there together. And then, fortunately, Kenzie didn't get on, but me and Louis, we ended up playing the full game together.
Very proud to play, and obviously disappointed Kenzie didn't get on. But I think the game, I thought we were on top. I thought we were the better team during the game, but it just penalties are tough. Losing on penalties is it doesn't show how the game went, in my opinion. So as much as we lost, I thought we were a better team throughout.
Even though I didn't get on, it was a really good experience just to travel with the team.
I think it's a really good experience for the young lads as well. See, Kenzie being 14, he doesn't experience that sort of competitiveness maybe. At that age, the football, it's not all about results, and it was a good experience for him it's a little bit of first team taste. Like the first team, they travel, stay in hotels, the pre-match stuff and the meetings, the coach, all that sort of thing. it can be obviously quite overwhelming sometimes, but it's good that he gets to experience that at such a young age.
Denny is already training with Lincoln's first team, while the others all dream of one day playing senior football together for the Imps.
I haven't thought too much about that, to be honest. The first bit was a bit of a surprise that it would happen this year. It would be great, obviously, if I could end up getting a professional deal here, but that's not to me. That I get told that very soon. And then for these two, I think they should just continue focusing on the 18s and then worry about the next step when it comes to their scholarship time. But yeah, that'd be an amazing achievement to happen.
Yeah, that's definitely the aim, and just I should just like for everybody, just take every day as it comes. Like, just give everything, and if you give your everything and it's not good enough, then you couldn't have done any more. But maybe one day we might play with each other on the first team pitch. But we'll see. Yeah, hopefully one day we can all play together on the same pitch. I'm not really sure if it's ever been done before, but could definitely try and make it.
That was sweet, wasn't
Honestly, mate, I'm not crying. It's just windy here. Can you imagine how proud family and friends?
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's an incredible story. Like, my mum's happy enough seeing me not make it as a footballer. Can you imagine I had two other brothers? It would be absolutely insane. So,
imagine all three though at senior level on the same team.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that would be
crazy.
great. I would love to just go.
We've seen two brothers, but I don't think we've ever seen three family members.
Yeah.
I can't, not that I know of anyway, not at a good standard as well.
Nah,
but
neither.
anyway, listen, I love your faces, all of you. You know, you look incredibly well. Ben, your slicked hair this week. Dave is looking good. Liv, you always look great, always look stylish. But we're going to finish the show with Ben's question challenge. And to remind the listeners and the viewers, we asked Ben to find out who is leading the race for Liam Delap. Now, I tried to get a sneaky answer from Tim. Ben came in, he intercepted. Go on, Ben. It's your turn. Let us know what's happening.
So Chelsea are the front runners for Liam Delap. That is the short answer. I'm sure Liv is celebrating off camera at the moment. And it's going to be interesting because naturally Ipswich could stay up and make a play to try and keep him. But the expectation is that he'll depart Ipswich regardless, even if they secure their place in the Premier League this summer. And Chelsea have got a number of people, including Enzo Maresca, that know Liam Delap. Some of them have worked with him as well from their time within the Chelsea hierarchy at Man City. And Delap, I think, is also quite intrigued by the Chelsea project, especially knowing that if he's the number 9 that comes in, he may stand a very strong chance of supplanting or at least competing with Nicholas Jackson, who we must stress Chelsea do still have big faith in. So Chelsea and Delap is one to watch. Now, Chelsea also like Benjamin Sesko. The good news for Joel is that I think Arsenal are leading that race. So I can foresee a situation where everyone wants Alexander Isak. He doesn't leave Newcastle. Arsenal go for Benjamin Sesko. Players sold on the project. He just wanted to wait and do an extra season at Leipzig. But when he was presented with that choice between Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Sesko picked Arsenal and then made a secondary choice that he was going to stay at Leipzig. So Arsenal are quite confident on Sesko. If they get Sesko, Chelsea then likely would move for Liam Delap. And then we wait and see whether Manchester United, who also appreciate Delap, can influence that situation. Of course, Manchester United fans being greedy and not thinking about finances will say, we'll just get Victor Gyökeres because Ruben Amorim likes him, but that's a 70 million outlay. And I think you have a scenario where right now it's probably Gyökeres and Osimhen the most expensive, and then likely Benjamin Sesko because there's no release clause, followed, but there'll be similar amounts, 60, 65 million euros maybe. Delap may be the cheapest of all of the options. So Chelsea front runners, Arsenal not really in the conversation for Delap. Keep an eye on Manchester United, and Tottenham are the latest suitor to look at Delap as well. So my expectation is he'll leave Ipswich even if they stay up, and Chelsea at the moment seem best positioned to get that deal over the line.
Oh, you've done
I like that. I'll be happy with that. Spurs can. They've got Solanke. They don't need him. I like Liam Delap. He caused Chelsea so many problems. He causes every defender so many problems every time he plays them. So yeah, I'd be very open to Liam Delap.
Agreed. You know, he's another one where you look at it and you go, "Wow, City just have him in abundance."
Yeah,
isn't it? Like, you
ridiculous.
just can't believe what's happening. So yeah, no, I think he's a really good player, to be fair. And I would feel a little bit sorry for Nicholas Jackson. I'm not gonna lie, because I feel like
I like Nico.
yeah, he is good, but
he's only going to improve. I would just add very briefly as well that Man City have got a buyback clause on Liam Delap, but at this stage, there's no indication that they're going to take it. But that could be an added wrinkle in all of this as well come the summer, that technically Manchester City can just buy the player back if he agrees, but it doesn't look like that's their plan at this stage. And obviously with Omar Marmoush arriving and Erling Haaland being the starting 9, if he thought about that option, if it presents itself, he's not going to get the same game time as at Chelsea, Spurs or Manchester United.
No. Chelsea, and especially seeing what Cole Palmer's done at Chelsea, he'll be licking his lips if he goes over there. But I have to say to the both of you, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm saying joining me as if it's my show, but thank you.
It is your show, Joel.
I'm so jet lagged at the moment. You have no idea, but it's been easy running the show with you guys. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in, the listeners, the watchers. We really appreciate the support for Market Madness. So please keep on watching. And yeah, we will catch you in 2 weeks' time. We still need a break after deadline day. And as usual, we'll be talking about the biggest football transfer stories with top guests. And don't forget, you can watch us on YouTube, X, Facebook, and you can also search at Gimme Sport, or you can listen on your podcast app of your choice. Links are in the description.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And for more info on any of the stories we've discussed and so much more, head to givemesport.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.